Okay. All right. We are live, but we must let it breathe for just a moment here. Hang tight, gang. Stoked to speak with you all tonight. And we are good. Welcome in, everybody, to the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, with me, my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. Zack, we know that the franchise tag for Dre'Mont Jones' position in particular is somewhere in between. It's like 19.7 million or something like that. Albert Breer reported today on the MMQB that from what he's hearing, Scott's going to love that's probably not too far off from what his actual market value is going to be when the free agent market opens here in just less than 2 weeks time. Is Dre'Mont Jones going to command that kind of money? A guy who, I'll just remind everybody real quick, Zach, has averaged 5.5 sacks per season since entering the league. And one little caveat in that is he didn't really become a full-time starter till 2021. So a lot of that production has been the last 2 years for what it's worth. So it's trending in the right direction. But what say you?
I mean, you boil it down to 2 years. He has 11 sacks in 2 years. Is 11 sacks worth $20 million annually? I don't think so. And I'm a Draymond Jones fan. I am. I was lauding him up as the miniature version of Aaron Donald, but Aaron Donald is in that tier one, the real Aaron Donald. Jeffrey Simmons, who's also negotiating a new contract, he's in that tier. I think Draymond is one tier below that in the $15, $16 million a year range, which is still a lot of money. But going to 20, I don't think I would do if I'm George Payton.
I just don't. If he was a more balanced player in terms of what he brought value wise to the defense, and who knows, maybe that is something that can continue to develop as he gains more and more experience. But I mean, Aaron Donald's a monster. His calling card obviously is as a pass rusher inside, but he's just as apt to make a great play against the run, Zach, as he is against the pass. And that's what makes him so valuable. J.J. Watt, too, back when he was, King Kong when it came to interior defenders. I just don't see that for Dre'Mont Jones. I like Dre'Mont Jones. I like the attitude he brings to the defense. It's kind of similar to the Derrick Wolf, don't ever you know what with us. It's very similar to that. Maybe not quite as on his sleeve as Derrick Wolf, but I don't think the value's right. I would let him go for if that's really what it's going to cost to hold on to Dre'Mont Jones on an APY basis. I'm saying thanks for your 4 years, big dog. Best of luck to you.
See, he's like Derrick Wolf, and he isn't. Because how many times has Draymond showed frustration with being a part of the Broncos or being in Denver to the point where he had to go on social media recently and say, listen, Broncos country, I want to be here for as long as I can. And that didn't exactly send the right message. It says to me that if you pay me, I will be here and I will not make up any more qualms about it. But $20 million a year player is a great player. I think Draymond's a good to very good player. It's an overreach for someone like that. It's a luxury because the Broncos are not a Draymond Jones away. You know what the Broncos are? About 3 offensive linemen and then some away. I'd rather put that $20 million toward the front 5 and protect Russell Wilson.
That as long as I can comment, it's kind of like the equivalent of your boyfriend or girlfriend saying, I love you. And you're like, thank you. It's kind of like that, you know. It doesn't really say all that much, or it doesn't say what you think it's really trying to communicate. But some hellos here in the chat real quick before we jump in. We got Ed Keating jumping in. Yo, it's great to see you, Ed. Hope you've been well, big dog. Thank you for the super chat. He says, what's up, everyone? I got to meet a childhood hero of mine today, Steve Atwater. I got to talk to him for 10 minutes today and got a pic with him. He's a really nice guy. Yes, he is. He's, if you'd be surprised maybe based on what your perception of Steve Atwater is, the player, right? This ferocious, big hitting, physical, just like animal on the grass, right? But in person, he's one of the kindest, sweetest human beings that you'll ever meet. So that's really cool for you, Ed. Dope.
I mean, we met him at the combine. We talked to him for a few minutes about the Broncos, and he could literally not stop talking. It was so natural, and he was so nice and gracious about his time. He is to this day, one of the nicest people I have ever come across. So I'm glad you got that experience with him. He's a really, really good individual.
For half of beat, we had him believing that that night I was going to sacrifice a goat to the
That's
football
right.
god so that he could get in the Hall of Fame. He's one of those guys that like believes the first thing and then you're like, no, it's a joke. He's like, ah ha ha ha.
It worked though.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, it did work. I did it. It was metaphorical sacrifice of a goat to get him in. But yes, it happened. Sam Bam, bro, great to see you. Thank you for the super chat. Uh, Appreciate you, big dog. He says, "Evening, Chad and Zach. I heard the Broncos are quietly shopping Courtland Sutton. Hope they keep him though. His talent hasn't been on full display due to bad coaching and quarterback play. I feel. Go Broncos." Yeah, there's been little rumors and buzz. And I think, Zach, the main reason for it is that it kind of makes sense. The Broncos are lacking premium draft capital this year. And one of the positions that you could argue anyway, that they have a little bit of a surplus is at wide receiver, especially with Tim Patrick coming back and being expected to be at 100% good to go by the time the regular season rolls around, because he did tear his ACL August 2nd last year. So he'll be good to go by the time you get to the regular season. So, and they play such a similar position too. I mean, or I should say they're similar type wide receivers, trusty, reliable. I guess Tim Patrick, Zach, even though he's a possession style receiver like Sutton, he's much more reliable in terms of his hands. He doesn't drop the ball. But what you gain in that department with Tim Patrick, you kind of lose out on in Sutton's ability to go up and get the ball. We used to joke about his 60-40, his 70-30 ball, and 80-20 ball. That's kind of fizzled since his knee injury, but still, Tim Patrick, I guess he's no slouch in that department. But what say you as far as the Sutton rumors, and is that a transaction that you would countenance?
Well, these are things that you hear this time of year. That's why Scott and I and you were joking about it before the show. It's sources and speculation season. So you're going to hear these rumors pop up. It's good for business, but I don't think it holds all that water in reality. Because why does it have to be one or the other? Why does it have to be either Tim Patrick or Courtland Sutton? Why can't they retain both? And KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy and, put as many weapons in front of Russell Wilson as possible. I would not look to trade Courtland. I would hope that he's fully healed from the ACL now and he's going to benefit from better coaching and better quarterback play.
Yeah. If you were, I don't know, if you had, I guess there's a counter argument to what I'm about to assert here, but if you hadn't gone out and hired one of the, best offensive minds of the last 25 years and Sean Payton, I would maybe be a little more inclined to the idea of dangling Courtland Sutton. But now I'm just really dying to see what he can do in a Sean Payton scheme, quarterbacked by Russell Wilson, being coached by Sean Payton. I want to see what that might look like. Courtland Sutton on one side, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, all three on the field, along with Greg Dulcich. And, we'll see how the running back stable shapes up. But that could be really good if Sean Payton manages to get Russ back to where he belongs. Justin Larch jumping in. Thank you, brother, for that super chat. Very kind of you, big dog. He's hearing rumors too, Zach, saying, I heard Frank Clark is available. Zach, what have you heard on this front?
I think he is going to be released, so he'll be a free agent, obviously. I just feel he'll be too expensive for what the Broncos want to do. They want to plug holes at defensive end or outside linebacker. They can either go through the draft with their later round picks, preferably, or they can go for a lower tier free agent. Clark is going to cost too much money, and I feel like he is past his prime at this point of his career.
Howie throwing down some big boy stars. Howie frickin' Day throwing down some frickin' stars on Facebook. Huge, huge. Thank you, Howie. It's great to see you, big dog. Longtime MHH member of our community, and we miss you when you're not with us, brother. Thank you for the support, though. Goes a long way. You know that. Marcus Lewis Henna from across the pond checking in. Great to see you as well. 2 nights in a row. Awesome. Says, hey, guys, love and respect from the UK to MHH and Broncos fans. Broncos for life. Yeah, it's getting late for you. It's the wee hours of the morning for you. What are you doing up so late? Oh, Mile High Huddle podcast. You're a Prince, Marcus. Thanks, bro. John, a.k.a. D-Generation X, jumping in as well. Thank you, bud. Zach, he wants to know, should the Broncos go after Derrick Henry since he's on the trade market?
You know what Derrick Henry requires to be Derrick Henry? That's an offensive line to run behind. I mean, we can keep debating which player should go to the Broncos or who they should go after, but until they fix the O-line, it simply will not matter what they do in the running game or the passing game. He has a lot of not a lot of tread. He has not a lot of tread left, I feel like, on his tires. He's a 29-year-old running back, and as Dylan said in the comments, trading significant assets. By the way, what are you trading for to acquire Derrick Henry? You don't have a first or second round pick, but trading assets for a devalued position, a 29-year-old running back, when you have problems along the O-line, 3 new starters preferably, that's a hill I would not want to climb.
It's weird because, again, the perception, this was something we talked a little bit about last night from the Chris Sims interview over the weekend of the Combine. The perception of the Sean Payton offense is that it's, high-flying aerial attack. Mostly, when you think of a Sean Payton offense, you think of Drew Brees, you think of Marcus Colston catching all those passes and touchdowns for years and years, and then later guys like Michael Thomas. But they were also very physical, cut from the Bill Parcells cloth, physical football team up front. More often than not, that started with the offensive line, which the Broncos do not have right now. Zach, and usually one of those backs in the stable for Peyton in New Orleans was a physical, bruising type guy, whether you go way back to Chris Ivory back in the day. Mark Ingram is more of that kind of style. He's a little bit smaller, obviously, than Derrick Henry, but still more of a bruiser, more of a physical type running back. So I could actually see it in some alternate universe. Right now, though, I think the Broncos have other bigger fish to fry than going out and trying to figure out how to get Derrick Henry here, especially as Zach said, without that linchpin component here. You need the offensive line setting that tone and open up holes because he's a one-cut, straight-ahead guy. And if you're not giving him those lanes, he's pretty easy. He's easier than you might think for defenses to handle if you're not giving him those lanes. I mean, if you think back to, Zach, one last thing, and I'm serving it back, to that shutout victory. Remember when Vic Fangio's Broncos shut out the Titans, which was the beginning of the Ryan Tannehill era? It was when they pulled Marcus Mariota. I mean, they contained Henry, and that's how you did it, is you just handle that offensive line, don't give him the holes, and then look, he doesn't have the speed, so you can, if you're holding them up right at the line of scrimmage, basically at the point of attack, guys can swarm and bring him down.
I mean, if the Broncos were a Derrick Henry away from competing for a title, I'd say go for it. But even then, with what assets? A player-for-player trade, then you're taking away from one strength to add to another. I would say root for Javonte to come back to full strength, bring back Latavius Murray, who can be that hold the fort bruiser type until then, maybe draft a running back or two, and then save the money that you would spend on Derrick Henry's contract and put it toward O-linemen. That is the number 1, number 2, and number 3 priority this offseason.
Mike Ronquillo jumping in. Love you, big dog. He says the Kansas City Chiefs will not franchise tag offensive tackle Orlando Brown. And he wants to know what our thoughts are on that. So, Zach, as an option for the Broncos, and indeed, it doesn't seem to make much sense for the Chiefs to actually franchise tag him. So if he does end up hitting the market, is that a guy you'd like to see? Do you think he's a guy that could kind of fit the Sean Payton mold?
What I like about Orlando Brown is he can play right or left tackle. He's also a really good pass protector. He leaves a little to be desired in the running blocking department, but great player, linchpin player. The thing is, though, I read that Jawan Taylor from Jacksonville, who's a much lesser talent, a tier 2 talent, he can get 17 or 18 on this tackle market. That would mean Orlando Brown could get upwards of $20 million a year. I think that would be a little too rich for the Broncos' blood because, again, they need multiple spots to be filled on the O-line. So I would love Orlando Brown, but I would not cry if they settled for a Caleb McGarry, Mike McGlinchey, or Jawan Taylor.
Sorry, my browser is being slow. There I go again, trying to pull up other things that I can scratch and sniff. So, Phil jumping in. Appreciate you, brother. The winner of the Facebook jersey giveaway, reigning winner, he got his order in. We know what it is. It's on the way. So, Phil, you got to send us that selfie, bro, when you get your jersey, and then you can spill the beans. Maybe you already have in the chat. I don't know, but spill the beans to everybody on what jersey you selected. But he's saying, good evening, Priest and Deacon Scott. What do you think about Isaac Shoemaker? in the draft. Go Broncos. Uh, MHH for life about the Isaac Shoemaker draft. You're talking about the hire, right? Of course. Zach, your thoughts on this? Yes. Okay. I'm like, wait, are there? Uh, Zach, I mean, we're getting into the very like tail end of the hires here for the Broncos coaching staff under Sean Payton. I know you maybe had something cooking on this. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the story's up if you guys want to read it at milehuddle.com. The Broncos hired a defensive quality control coach by the name of Isaac Shoemaker. And that's an interesting spelling of that surname, Chad. I haven't seen it spelled that way before. But this is a very young coach, still, crafting his career. He spent the last couple years with the Chargers in a similar QC role. Before that, he was at Alabama in some sort of analyst role where he graduated from. He worked under Nick Saban. So again, like Chad said, tail end of the coaching staff. This is a guy who's going to help with tape breakdown, cut-ups, defensive formations. He's basically a coaching intern under VJ for 2023.
And for a guy like him still trying to make his way in the league, trying to kind of catch on and build his own resume, man, he's got to be pinching himself that he gets to come work and be that kind of gopher guy for Sean Payton, because this is where coaching stars can be born. The Lady D, jumping in with a top rope super chat. Whoa. Thank you so much. She says, Chad, evening, Chad and Zach. I agree 100% with Zach. The O-line must be fixed. Can't stay on. I'll catch you later. Oh, no. Sorry to hear. She says her husband's brother passed away. Dang it. So sorry to hear that, Deanna. Prayers up. Let us know if there's anything we can do.
Yeah.
If and when you hear our response to that. Thank you for the super chat. So kind of you to do in such a terrible moment for your family. So very difficult. Let us know what we can do if there's anything to help you out, though. All right. But for now, as you probably know, prayers up, support from us, support from the community. So much love to you, Lady D.
Yeah, thank you, Deanna, and my condolences to you, your husband, your family. Whatever we can do to help you guys get through this, we will. But thank you again, as always.
It is very good to see you, though. It sucks it's under such bad circumstances. Sue Gibson, yes, everyone, see the prayers, the thoughts, the support, it's there. So positive energy heading your direction for you and your family and your husband, of course. But Lady D, love you. Justin Larch, number 2 tonight. Thanks, big dog. Very kind of you. Connect with us on social media. It's another place we can keep the conversation going, whether it's Twitter. Make sure you're subbed on YouTube. Make sure you're following on Facebook. We can keep the conversation going there. Zach, there's also, it's kind of fun because yesterday we were complaining, no news, not very many rumors going on, right? That we, even out of the combines, kind of like one of the most dead combines relative to the Broncos. And you were saying even for the entire NFL in recent memory. But today there's been, as the media gets back to work, so to speak, in aggregation land, there has been a few little nuggets, rumors. Hey, the Broncos should do this. One of the things ESPN put out was, and Nick Kendall just published an article tonight on this subject. They were urging the Broncos to make a bold move, and that move would be to trade for Brandon Cooks, the wide receiver. You need speed. KJ Hamler obviously brings that speed when he's on the field. You can't really count on him being on the field. So would you want to see the Broncos orchestrate a trade? I got to remind ESPN, though, with
What are you trading?
With what are you trading for Brandon Cooks? But your thoughts?
I didn't see the article. I don't know what ESPN posited the Broncos trade with. It was a conditional pick or a future pick, but why give up your already depleted assets to fill a position of strength? You're already good there. It's like adding Derrick Henry. Why do you need him when you can go a little bit cheaper and put that money toward where it counts? I am perfectly fine hoping KJ Hamler can stay healthy and finally be the deep threat the Broncos thought they were getting as a second-round pick. I'd be perfectly fine with maybe Montrell Washington developing into a deep threat, or Jalen Virgil, 2 guys who showed serious deep chops as rookies. I'd rather lean on them as complements to your big 3 in Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and Tim Patrick than trade for an aging Brandon Cooks who has been on so many different teams in different seasons for a reason. If he was that good, he would stick around beyond 1 year. It would be an unwise, bad business type move by George Payton.
if you didn't know any better, you'd maybe think that this dude plays in the NBA because sometimes, like in the NBA, players they get that trade bug, and it's nothing of their own doing. It's just they kind of become known and get the reputation for being traded and dealt and used as maneuvering pieces left and right. Now, we're not talking about the NBA tonight, but that's kind of like Brandon Cooks. He has been traded so many times. This would be a much more compelling subject, though, that we could actually roll up our sleeves and get into if the Broncos had type of capital that it would take. But then again, this is not Zach the Brandon Cooks of yesteryear. This is a guy that's getting increasingly long in the tooth. So you might be able, if you're the Broncos, to pry him off Houston's hands for less than you might think.
Well, let me tell you while you were saying that, what I was thinking when it comes to the passing game, you know what would help more than Brandon Cooks, a hypothetical deep threat for Russell Wilson? A running game for Russell Wilson. If they can get, whether it's Javonte or Latavius, whoever is going to be RB1, RB2, if they get that running game going, that's where Russell Wilson thrives, off play action in a complementary role. That would be the biggest boon to the offense, Sean Payton, Russ, everyone, if they can get the ground game going. And again, that starts up front. So give me less Brandon Cooks and more Orlando Browns.
Marcus jumping in again to say, I feel that Greg Dulcich showed out better than Courtland Sutton last season. Your thoughts, please. You know, Sutton's season, these are two different topics here. Dulcich as a rookie and Sutton. It was kind of weird because if you think about Courtland Sutton's 2022 campaign, you might be surprised to learn that he actually wasn't all that far off from a 1,000-yard season. He finished in the 800s. But did it really feel like he was that involved in things? I mean, the Broncos offense was obviously quite pedantic and impotent and nothing to write home about. And so that trickles down to everybody in terms of the production and the box score. But Courtland Sutton, Zach, scored twice last year. And even though you had Russell Wilson for large swaths of the season trying to force feed him the ball, they just could not get on the same page. You didn't see any of that explosive playmaking, just knack that Courtland showed early in his career, the same kind of knack that you started to see Jerry Jeudy display down the stretch. Meanwhile, Greg Dulcich, you get him in a competent offense with a competent quarterback play and a competent play caller. Dude, sky is the limit for this kid, health willing.
See, that's what I'm saying. Instead of adding Cooks another weapon on paper, you have another weapon already in Dulcich, and that's the safety blanket for us. He was looking like, with respect to Jeudy, the Broncos' most dependable receiver for certain parts last year. So he's definitely on the up and up. The thing, though, when it comes to Court, you talked about Jeudy. In 2021, didn't Jeudy finish with 0 touchdowns? And then he broke out a little more last year. So you get a little increase in, you mentioned the word competency once again. We think Sean Payton will be better. Russell Wilson should be better. That all jives. The butterfly effect should lead to maybe Courtland going back to pre-injury Courtland Sutton. And ain't nobody want to trade pre-injury Courtland Sutton.
A big problem with Sutton, and this is a good point Mr. Producer throws down, 35% of his yards came in the first 3 games. 35% of his yards came in the first 3 games. So that's really why it feels like Sutton wasn't involved, even though he was. I mean, from a targets perspective, unless my memory Rolodex betrays me, led the team in targets, but the production just wasn't there. He and Wilson just couldn't get on the same page. And frankly, Zach, he just hasn't been the same player since that ACL. And we hoped that 2021 was going to be kind of like the outlier season in terms of, he's just getting back in the saddle. He was dealing with Teddy and Drew Lock. 2022 is when things are going to come together for him again. Because remember, one of the most marvelous, and I mean that literally, like you marvel at Courtland Sutton's 2019 season. One of the reasons for that was he produced over 1,200 yards and half a dozen touchdowns, making it to a Pro Bowl, catching passes from 3 quarterbacks, the likes of Joe Flacco, Brandon Allen, and a rookie Drew Lock. So I don't know. Hopefully that caliber of play can come back sometime soon. But I have a feeling that even though modern Zach sports medicine has improved in the last decade by leaps and bounds, I mean, quantum leaps, maybe Sutton's one of those guys that is the exception to the rule in terms of, not the exception, but the proves the rule from the old days, which is guys aren't the same after an ACL.
Maybe, but I think medicine and science have improved to a point where players can come back and be their old selves again. And here's the thing: I've questioned Courtland Sutton's want to and his devotion to the game and the Broncos, but you put Courtland Sutton on the Chiefs or the Packers or another wide receiver needy team, and he will look like the pre-injury Courtland Sutton. Winning cures all. I think physically he's there. I think mentally he still might be behind, but the Broncos offense is more functional. If he's getting the ball, they're scoring points, they're winning games. I think we'll see the entire receiving room up their game collectively.
We've got Phil wanting to know about a couple of edge rushers here, KJ Henry or Isaiah Foskey. Both guys are interesting, Zach. It's considered to be a little bit more of a deeper edge class where it's not so top heavy as it often can be in the NFL draft, where all the elite guys are to be found in round one and then it's slim pickings. There'll be some options, and this is something the Broncos absolutely have to address one way or another, whether it's free agency or the draft, is getting better production out of that edge room, because Randy Gregory, when he's available, and healthy, because sometimes he's available but not as healthy as you want him to be. If he's healthy and fully present for you, he checks one of those boxes, but you need a complement in today's league. And Baron Browning, I'm still not 100% convinced his ultimate place in the NFL is as an edge rusher. And Nick Bonito, man, he has flashed. He's got some potential there if you can figure out how to make him a balanced, complementary player. But your thoughts on these guys and just edge in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's another cop out for me where I feel like you got to prioritize O-line. And also, these questions are tough to answer before free agency because their plans can change depending on who they sign, but they cannot, in my view, use their top picks on an edge player without solidifying the O-line. The O-line first. You mentioned Gregory, $70 million. Nick Bonito, second-round investment. Baron Browning, third-round investment, who looked pretty good at edge last year. Jonathan Cooper is a really solid number 4 guy to have. You're okay there. It's not dire. You look at right tackle. Who is starting there? You don't have a starter. Everyone's a free agent. Who is left guard? You don't have a starter. Everyone's a free agent. Center, one guy in Graham Glasgow you could cut. The other, Lloyd Cushenberry, is a cut candidate. You need to address O-line before you even think about another position.
Henry, though, not very productive in school in terms of sacks. I mean, not very fast. He seems like a mid-round guy. Foskey, what do you think, Scott? Round. You don't even like him? 4, 5? So, but, in fairness to what Phil's asking here, these are the type of guys that the Broncos are going to have to, kind of options that'll be available to them. Let me put it that way by the time they go on the clock. But think about it, guys, we're going to be sitting on our hands round 1, round 2. By the time the Broncos circle in to finally start making some picks in round 3, do you want a guy that's like a middling edge rusher, or do you want to get a offensive lineman early? I mean, you don't want, again, Zach makes a good point. I think first off, we're not trying to shut down conversation on the draft, but a lot of this stuff is going to become more crystal clear when just even after the first week of the first 2 or 3 days of free agency, we'll see what holes the Broncos fill, because that's kind of the generic NFL operating procedure, which is fill your main needs in free agency, open yourself up to be a little bit more fluid, and draft best player available when the draft rolls around. So Drake Wally jumping in. What's up, brother? Covers the Colts in our sister site, Horseshoe Huddle. Great writer. He says, I love Greg Dulcich. He's a serious problem in the slot. Reminds me of Evan Ingram. Just needs to improve blocking. Anyway, any draft wide receivers to Denver? Any draft wideouts to Denver, guys? In a normal season, where the Broncos are not strapped for draft capital, you could count on it, and we could go through a laundry list. But the Broncos, that's one of their deeper positions on the roster, wide receiver, especially if KJ Hamler sticks around this year, which there's not really any reason to believe that he won't, other than just hasn't been available, you never know type thing. Broncos have moved on from high round guys like that failed to launch, whether it's due to injuries or just general failure to launch. I mean, Carlos Henderson, Zach, was a 3rd-round pick, and he didn't survive long in the Mile High City. But I share your thoughts on Dulcich. He is similar to Evan Ingram, although I would argue he's already a better blocker than Ingram. And at least right now for Dulcich, Zach, he's a willing blocker, which goes a long way because you can hone those skills as long as it's something you can attack.
I think he's a better blocker, but at this stage, he's less of a pass catcher, and he'll get there with opportunity. If he stays healthy, I think he's a long-term tight end option for the Broncos. In terms of receiver, it's kind of like my cop out from the last question about edge. We don't really know until free agency happens and where the Broncos are going and who they add or subtract from that room. As it stands now, though, you have your possession guys in Court and Tim Patrick. You have your do-it-all in Jerry Jeudy, who can play inside or outside. And you have your speed demons in KJ, Montrell, and Jalen Verger. I think you're okay at wide receiver. If you want to add a guy in the later rounds or a UDFA, that's fine. But I am not taking one in the third round, for example.
No. Well, I mean, not with those first two picks. 727 mil in the house. Very, very generous super chat, brother. It's great to see you. He says, I don't want to trade Courtland, but all these people fiending for Michael Thomas and Miles Sanders and all these other mid players must be stopped. We need O-line, D-line, and linebackers. Yeah, feel you on that, generally speaking, Mill. The Court thing, if the price was right, you'd have my attention. So I think the Broncos answer the phone when people call on Court, but like they also know that he's probably going to end up being worth more to them on the still relatively team-friendly deal that he's on in a Peyton offense, quarterback by Russell Wilson, than what he might fetch currently, which is maybe like a conditional fifth or something. I mean, you could maybe get more for him. I don't know. But he's just fizzled the last 2 years as a result of that ACL. But yes, he's speaking your language here, Zach. O-line, D-line.
Yeah, I was thinking conditional third for Sutton. Fifth is a slap in the face. I mean, the guy was a Pro Bowl receiver, but I do agree, Mill, about Michael Thomas. He's washed. I think, Scott said he has 77 receiving yards in the last 3 years. I'm not a guy I want to take a chance on when I have possession guys already in Court and TP. Miles Sanders, though, I don't think is mid. In the right situation, he could be a game breaker. Him, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, running backs who, when they're the RB1 and the centerpiece, they could be, explosive game breakers. The thing is, they don't need to spend money on that. That's where I agree with you. That'd be a luxury move for a team that can't afford many luxuries right now. Put the money, and even I'm talking to you, Draymond Jones, $20 million a year. Put that money toward the O-line, the D-line, the edge unit, like we talked about, where you need it. You don't need a running back right now. You don't need Michael Thomas right now.
Yeah, well said. Scott, I want to grab this one from George Fox here. He says, if we work on the offensive line, do you see us drafting a quarterback? If we work on the O-line, do you see us drafting a quarterback? Denver Broncos for life, MHH for life. I would not be stunned in any way, shape, or form, George, to see the Broncos use one of their later round picks on a quarterback. I would be a little bit surprised considering what we know right now is their needs. Again, we don't know what's going to happen in free agency, what holes get plugged. But from what we know now and understand now, are you seeing me kind of like freeze up in the frame, Zach, as I'm talking?
You were, but you're good now.
That's weird. Having some StreamYard problems lately. But anyway, the point being that what we know now currently of the Broncos' needs, it would be a little bit of a surprise to see them use one of their third-round picks, one of their first two picks in the draft, on a quarterback. But if they fill some of those holes early on in free agency, all bets are off. They do need a backup, and they do need kind of a more long-term developmental option to groom behind Russ, a guy that Sean Payton can groom. It fits his specific peccadillos.
Yeah, I think they'll pick up an experienced backup like a Jameis Winston, for example, for a couple $1 million, and then Sean Payton will have his choice of a late-round quarterback. There was the rumor that I believe we're going to cover for the website. I can't remember who's writing it exactly, but that Sean Payton, this is what I think Matthew Berry heard from the Combine, that Sean Payton does not love Russell Wilson, and after this year, it's basically a one-year audition, and if Russ bombs, then Sean Payton will move on. I think he'll have that autonomy, but when they pick a quarterback, not if, will tell us a lot about how Sean feels about Russ. Ultimately, I would love for a young quarterback to be in the Broncos pipeline. I'd love for Peyton to have his own autonomy to choose a quarterback, but it's not going to be like in the third round, like Chad said. If anything, like 6th, 7th, or UDFA.
By the way, I don't know how much I buy that for what it's worth, but even if we take it at face value, I don't think Russ is gonna. I feel really good about Russ's outlook in 2023 with Sean Payton. I'm having a feeling, in other words, that that's not going to really be an issue. Like I don't think Sean Payton's going to be eating his heart out, going, man, can't wait till we get to the 2024 offseason so we can dump this clown and go find my guy. I think Russ is going to be getting back to a closer version of vintage Russ. Maybe not the whole way because he is entering his age 35 season, but still. John, he wants to know, how do I get a Buckham shirt, bro? You go to mhhmerch.com. In fact, in the description of this video on Facebook is the link directly to the Buckham t-shirt that you guys have absolutely crushed. Our providers, like, it's like hotcakes for them. So easy to find, brother. mhhmerch.com, or just click the link in the description of the video, big dog. Okay, Zach, we're at 35 minutes. We're doing pretty good time-wise. But not a whole lot of actual real news for us to sink our teeth into today. Chad Beach, good to see you, bro, on Facebook, jumping in, saying, love this pod. We love you right back, big dog. And also, thank you, supporting Bridge the Gap, Chad. Good man. Let's see what else we got here. Just want to say hi to some folks, including Keith Brugman in the house. I want to get one here from Keith in a second. Drake, though, here's another. Thanks, bro.
Thank you,
He
Drake.
says, would it be crazy to predict a healthy Tim Patrick to go out and kill it? A Peyton offense, Wilson back on track. I say 65 receptions and 900 yards and 10 touchdowns. That might be a little rich on the touchdown side of things, Zach. But even if we, just for the sake of this conversation, assume you got a healthy Sutton, you got a healthy Jerry Jeudy, and you get a healthy Tim Patrick back, I don't think 6,500 or 65 receptions and 900 yards is beyond the pale. 10 touchdowns, I'd be stoked to see that from Tim Patrick, but I would be a little bit surprised. But yeah, I think he's going to be chomping at the bit to get back and prove what he can do, and especially what the Broncos lost from him, from his leadership and just keeping guys together. Those glue guys, that's what Timmy P is as well.
Definitely a glue guy. And you mentioned the receiving core. I mean, KJ Hamler's hopefully coming back healthy as well. So you have a full complement of weapons, and adding into that Greg Dulcich as well, a lot of mouths to feed if you're Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. So I understand the point you're trying to make here, Drake, and I definitely agree with it. I miss tweeting the most underrated player in the league is Tim Patrick, when he was going out there and week in and week out pulling down catches and making tough plays for the Broncos that not a lot of other players could. But it's like Chad said, 65 receptions, like the touchdowns. Scott points out he has 12 in 5 years. So to predict 10 touchdowns in 1 year, coming off a knee injury with so many other receivers vying for targets as well, could be difficult. But as long as he's on the field, he's a guy who will have more real life value than box score value. He'll make the play on third down. He'll make the play in the red zone. He'll make the play when you need it. But him being the number one receiver, statistically, it could be a tough task.
Very true. Keith wants to know, what position do you prioritize in free agency? And if you get that filled, what position do you then prioritize in the draft? So for us, I'll speak for myself. For me, it comes down to getting Sean Payton's offensive line figured out. I think it's relatively safe bet to assume Garrett Bolles will be back at left tackle, and they do expect him to be healthy. And then you've got Quinn Miners, Zach. But I don't trust that Graham Glasgow is going to survive his current situation, being in a cap casualty land, kind of purgatory right now. And Dalton Reisner, there is literally nothing to suggest the Broncos have any interest in re-signing him. I mean, it depends. If he goes out and tests the market and finds it, comes back to the Broncos, it's a very cool market. Maybe they throw him a few bucks because he is an experienced starter. All right, there's your left guard. But you've got three positions, what I'm getting at here, Zach, on the offensive line. So you got to figure that out first and foremost. And if you check those boxes, let's say you do it in stunning fashion, and it's like those old Elway free agent classes of yore where, it's like just home run after home run after home run. Then for me, if you've got the O-line solved in the free agency, you're starting five anyway, then I'm all about adding some edge depth, honestly, early on with your third round picks in the draft. But I'm just not 100% convinced you're going to be able to find those three things, those three starters up front so easily even though the Broncos are going to have some cap dollars to work with.
Yeah, and the thing about Reisner, I can speak for myself. I don't want him back even on a $2-3 million deal. I don't see what he brings to the table, and I don't see how he could benefit the Broncos as a starter. I hope they do decide to move on. For myself, the way I look at it, if you sign a couple starters, if you prioritize the O-line in free agency, I'm still prioritizing it in the draft. It's that important. You don't just need 3 new starters, Chad. You need at least 2 or 3 high-end backups as well. You're looking to draft or sign, import by any means necessary a lot of new offensive linemen. But if you do that on the open market, I agree with you. Fill out the edge core, fill out the defensive line, and then work your way back from there.
Eric Holt jumping in. He says, with the super chat, thank you, Eric. He says, longtime listener, and I love the show. Much love. He says, could you see the Broncos signing Orlando Brown and then moving Garrett Bolles to right tackle? I think it would be the other way around. If they did sign Orlando Brown, and I could see it, if they did do that, I think they would keep Bolles at left tackle, which you got to remember. Let's see, what was Bolles? 2017 class, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So, like, he's only been playing football for 8 or 9 years of his life, and every single year of that at Division I or pro level is at left tackle, whereas Brown already has shown a propensity for playing both. So if you go out and you spend money and get a great tackle like Brown, you probably just plug him in at right tackle because Bolles can hold his own at left.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We don't know how Garrett would be at right tackle, but what we do know is how Orlando Brown functions at right tackle. And it'd actually be less of a responsibility, I feel like, not being the blindside protector. In Brown's case, can focus on different assignments and use his power to help out the pass blocking for us. So I don't know if the Broncos go to 20 a year for Orlando Brown, but I certainly would not be crying if they made that signing.
What are the current draft stock, Scott, of Blake Freeland, Matthew Bergeron? Third, they're going to be there. So yeah, I mean they're going to be in the conversation there, likely, when the Broncos go on the clock. So even if they solve it, Zach, in the free agency, let's say they go out and they sign all 3 of those current need positions on the O-line, I wouldn't be opposed to them still using one of those early picks on like a swing developmental guy because Cam Fleming free agent, Calvin Anderson free agent, like there are a lot of needs that have to be checked off this year. And that's just like O-line. You flip it to the other side. I mean, backup quarterback, got to figure that out on the offensive side. Running back stable, got to figure that out still. Defense, you need to know who's going to be starting next to Josie Jewell next year at inside linebacker. Defensive line, you've got Deshaun Williams, free agent, Dre'Mont Jones, free agent. All right, so there's 2 spots. I mean, one of them could be filled by Mike Purcell, but then you get to edge. You got needs there. You've got needs at cornerback. You've got needs at safety. So I don't envy these guys, Zach. They've got they got a lot of priorities, and it's just going to be curious and interesting to see how they order those priorities in free agency, and then we'll know a lot more about the draft.
Yeah, and tight end as well. I mean, beyond Dulcich and Alberto, what do they really have? And this is why when you talk about trading for Derrick Henry, I kind of roll my eyes. They have holes throughout the roster. But again, Phil, this is not a question that's easy to answer right now. I would expect the Broncos to be aggressive on the OL in free agency. But even then, you got to double down in the draft. It might not be the sexiest classes this year on the open market or through the draft, but this is the year where the Broncos have kicked the can enough down the road. They got to bite the bullet and devote most of those resources to the offensive line. It just has to happen. It's time.
Indeed. Okay, guys, we're going to keep tonight a little bit short and sweet. I think we've covered all the main buckets that we wanted to grab tonight, some of the interesting stuff. But let not your hearts be troubled because we will be back on Thursday night. And BK, real quick, Jameis Winston going to be cut, him as a backup. That's something I wrote about today, by the way, with Derek Carr. Landing in New Orleans, that's probably going to shake loose Jameis Winston, which, if so, makes a lot of sense to bring him in as a backup. Had a lot of success with Sean Payton. So, real quick, Zach, before you do the out of here rundown, let's be serious for a minute about the prospect of Jameis Winston being available. Do you see Sean Payton actually wanting to bring him here?
I do. And if we're following the recent trends, I mean, how many former Saints have Sean Payton already imported to Denver? It seems like familiarity means a lot to him. it would make sense on the surface. I know he's become a meme, but he's experienced. He's a veteran. He has starting a background. He's also cheaper than a Jacoby Brissett or a Taylor Heineke or a Baker Mayfield. I would maybe see if Brissett or Heineke would go for 6 or 7 for 1 or 2 years each. But if you can get Jameis for 1 year, $2-3 million bucks, it's probably the wisest choice to make if you're Sean Payton.
So tomorrow, if I remember the calendar right, tomorrow's the deadline for NFL teams to make their franchise tag designations. And then basically a week from then, you've got the new league year opening up free agency. So we're in the home stretch. We've got one more week, but a lot of dominoes are going to start falling just today. I mean, a few franchise tags tomorrow, a few others. That'll kind of start shaping things. And then you're going to start hearing things. Cuts are going to be coming the next few days. So definitely keep it with MHH because we're going to have our ear to the floor on all these different rumors and transactions and cuts and as they come in real time. But before we dip out of here, we got a few messages for you.
And for what it's worth, I don't think the Broncos are going to tag Draymond Jones by the deadline. So to the open market, he goes. That was the MHH podcast, though. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. If you're not doing so already at the MHH pod, you can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want, we already got a question about it, some Buckham merch, a lot of hats, shirts, coffee mugs, anything you can fathom is on that website, mhhmerch.com. Be sure you're checking that out and perusing the inventory. And if you haven't, go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Be sure you're liking that page and following that page. If you haven't, guys and gals, go to Apple Podcasts, leave your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that Buckham merch each and every single month. But if anything, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you. You're muted.
Amen to that. Shout out to these great Facebook supporters tonight. Marcus Lewis Hanna, Howie frickin' Day, Phil McLaughlin in the frickin' house. Love you guys. On YouTube, our Super Chat superstars, Ed Keating, Sam Bam, Justin Larch throwing down multiples, D Generation X, John, the Lady D. Let's keep our thoughts and prayers for Lady D's family. Drake, thank you, bud. 727 mil. Eric Holt, much love and respect. Don't forget you got Broncos for breakfast on the bright. Plus, building the Broncos tomorrow night. It's going to be a gas. Can't wait to talk to you guys again on Thursday night. Keith, there will be options for signed copies of the Bridge the Gap LPs that come out on the 24th. So there will be information on that to come, my friend. But love you guys. Thank you.
We'll see y'all Thursday night. Have a great start to your week. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.